We can do everything right. We can be diligent and attentive to detail. But on occasion, we will need to process a credit or return for our customers. Unless there are extenuating circumstances, we shouldn't beat ourselves up if a customer makes a return. Even under the best of circumstances, there will be returns. We have to remember that the sales process is in play. A customer would never be due a refund or credit unless they had purchased something. The best way to create a refund or credit, then, is to access the original sales transaction. In this case, let's take a look at an invoice. We'll go ahead and open Invoices from the home screen. Once the invoice is opened, we can move to the top left and use the back arrow or the Find feature to locate exactly the transaction we're looking for. I prefer to work with refunds and credits this way because really I want to review the original transaction before I make any changes. This gives us the opportunity to do so. When we're ready to make the credit, we need to move to the upper right of the screen and click or tap the Refund Credit option. QuickBooks immediately opens a credit memo form. It has retained all of the original information from the original invoice, including the customer, all of the related information, such as the address, and of course, the items from the original invoice. Let's say in this example that we had made a bid and created an invoice for some work that required blueprints and a foundation slab. Maybe, being the honest business people we are, it did not take as long as we thought to generate the blueprints. So we actually need to charge $50 less. Well, first of all, we need to clean up this particular credit memo. We don't need to work at all with blueprint changes, so we can right-click on that line and choose to delete the line. Likewise, we can do the same thing for the foundation slab. This leaves us with the one item that we originally had, and the description and everything else should already be accurate. Now we simply need to put in the rate. If we're not going to refund the entire amount, we simply need to put in the amount that we are going to refund. We'll erase the 315 and change it to 50. It's important to not try to enter negative numbers here. QuickBooks already knows that this is a credit memo, so we need to enter the numbers and let QuickBooks decide what should be positives and what should be negatives. One thing that I've found that a lot of people often overlook is that they forget to change the customer message on the bottom left of the screen. Now, it's not necessarily that anything bad has happened. We're just making an adjustment because it didn't take us as long to do the blueprints. But especially if there was an issue, "Thank you for your business" may or may not be an appropriate message. We can either erase the message that was here, or we can select a different one from the dropdown, or it might be a good idea to actually create a couple of different messages to use in case a customer has an issue and is unhappy. Whenever we create credit memos, I think it's really important to put in a memo that we can see, but that does not print or is not part of what the customer will see. This just helps us understand why we're giving a $50 credit on this particular job. In this case, we just entered a message that less time was taken than originally invoiced. With that, we can click or tap Save and Close. Unlike a typical transaction, though, QuickBooks needs a little bit more information. It says, "Okay, so you want to give a $50 credit, but what exactly do you want to do with that credit? Do you want to retain it as an available credit? So if this customer makes another purchase, they can apply that credit to a future invoice. Or do you want to give a physical refund? Actually write a check." If we select this option, we will actually be presented with the check window as soon as we click OK. The third option is to apply the credit to an existing invoice, one that is already open and outstanding. That, of course, will cause an invoice window to open where we can choose a currently open invoice for this customer. We're actually going to retain this as an available credit. Then it can be applied to payments that are made in the future. With that, we will click or tap OK. The credit memo window closes, and our invoice is still open in the background, but we can save and close this invoice as well. Before we do so, though, take a close look and notice that the original cost for the blueprints has not changed. It's important to never change an invoice once it's been created, especially if it has money paid against it. Doing that just really can confuse the math and give us errors that we may never be able to recover from. It's more accurate and more appropriate to say we originally invoiced for $315. That's the number the customer knows as well. We then gave them a $50 credit, which we have also documented. The math is correct, and we can kind of follow the audit or the bookkeeping trail if we need to understand what happened between the estimate, the invoice, and the ultimate discount. That's how we handle refunds or credits in QuickBooks for a customer with an invoice. But what if we need to write off an entire invoice that we know we will never be able to collect on? Or what if we held a marketing campaign and somebody won a credit to be used against a project? Well, we can apply a credit to an invoice like we did, and that's probably what we'll do most often. But we also can create them from the customer's menu. If we activate the menu at the top of the screen, we see options not only for creating sales documents like estimates and invoices. The option to create something called a batch invoice can be used if we need to batch multiple customers for exactly the same items at exactly the same price. That would be a perfect example of maybe a subscription service where everybody was paying $25 a month. We also can enter sales or cash receipts. And what we're looking for is a little bit further down: create credit memos and refunds. We're not actually going to create another one because this screen is exactly the same as the other. The only difference is that we're not applying it against a particular invoice. So we would choose a customer, we would add an item in a description, and when we save it, we would also be presented with the option to apply it against an existing invoice, to save it as a credit on their account, or to write a check. So, with that said, we will go ahead and just close out of this window. We hope that we do not have to work with unhappy customers. We hope that we do not have to return goods because customers are unhappy with them or provide credits due to service issues. We want to work towards never having a customer service issue. But the fact is, if we are in business for any amount of time, and if we do any volume of business at all, credits and returns will happen. How you handle your customer relationships is critical, and honestly, it's not always easy. But at least handling the accounting behind the returns and credits can be.